No one announced it when the shift began, but something quiet inside you started connecting dots no one else noticed. While the world kept swallowing headlines and smiling through scripted routines, you were pulling back the curtain. Not out of suspicion, but because you felt something vibrating beneath the surface. There was a hidden rhythm in the chaos, and it was calling your name. You weren't trained for this. You didn't ask for it. But somehow, your soul remembered how to read between the lines. While others were chasing comfort, you started decoding the traps hidden inside the familiar. Every interaction became evidence. Every lie, a trail. You didn't confront them, you watched, listened, collected, until the whole board was lit up with connections only you could see. They thought you were just another kind-hearted presence to drain. Polite, predictable, programmable. They had no idea you were logging everything. The smiles that didn't reach the eyes. The timing that never made sense. The flattery that felt like a leash. They thought you were asleep because you weren't reacting. But you were archiving. What used to confuse you now confirms what you've always felt deep down. There are no coincidences when your spirit is this alert. Patterns repeat for a reason. And what others dismiss as random, you've mapped into a network of intentions. It's not paranoia. It's spiritual pattern recognition. And it's razor sharp now. You've become the kind of person who remembers silences louder than words. The kind who senses energy shifts in rooms where nothing was said. You don't just see through people, you see around them. You catch the choreography of control. And suddenly, their games look small next to the awareness you carry. They should have left you uninspired. Should have kept you comfortable. Because now that you're activated, there's no returning to softness. You're not reactive. You're surgical. You're tracing trails they didn't even know they left behind. You're solving riddles they didn't know they wrote. And it terrifies them, because the one thing systems like this can't survive is a witness with clarity. There's a mental camera rolling in the background of every moment now. The glances they thought went unnoticed are getting logged. The silences they thought were safe are being decoded. Actions once seen as harmless are now archived under suspicion. This is no ordinary awareness, it's a divine lens fused with raw inner clarity. Not everything needs to be proven on paper when the spirit can sense what lips never say. And those unsettling hunches you used to brush off? They were the first pages of a case file you were born to solve. What once felt like random anxiety is now a sharpened instrument of truth. Conversations echo louder when your inner ear is tuned to subtle interference. Tones shift, eyes blink differently, energies skip a beat, and you catch it all. There's a silent calibration happening every time someone enters your field. And it's not guesswork anymore. There's structure to this knowing. Preparation doesn't tremble. It watches. It tracks. It dissects. This is the opposite of panic. It's the calm choreography of a mind synchronized with higher purpose. The panic isn't coming from you anymore, it's coming from them. The very people who once relied on your disorientation are stumbling over their own shadows now. Their words are slipping. Their masks are cracking. Their attempts to maintain the illusion are losing strength under the pressure of your presence. You didn't just wake up, you recalibrated. Your inner perception now pierces like ultraviolet light, exposing the invisible stains in their behavior. You're tuned into frequencies they can't block or scramble. They tried to hide the signal, not realizing you were the receiver. The alarms were always ringing. You just didn't know how to translate them. That tightening in your chest? That sudden stillness mid-conversation? The urge to withdraw without a reason? None of it was random. It was the blueprint of your built-in detection system asking to be acknowledged. And now it's running in high resolution. The moment someone enters your orbit, their truth, or lack thereof, ripples through your nervous system like a broadcast. Disharmony isn't subtle anymore. It sounds like static in a quiet room. Unfiltered. Immediate. You didn't stumble here by accident, you were led. If something in your spirit is stirring, don't ignore it. Tap join to access exclusive content, prophetic insights, and a community of purpose-driven souls. This isn't just a membership, it's your moment of alignment. Step into who you were born to be. Welcome to the Chosen. The whisper that once felt like imagination has now become your bodyguard. The guidance you once second-guessed now leads with unshakable presence. It doesn't argue. It alerts. It doesn't panic. It positions. This radar doesn't work through observation, it operates through resonance. While others perfect their performance under flattering lights, you're tuning into the texture of their energy. And energy? It doesn't lie. It wobbles. It betrays. It leaves trails no costume can hide. You see it before they speak. You feel it before they act. Awareness has evolved into mastery. The version of you they were hoping to encounter no longer exists. They prepared for someone slow to react. Someone easy to confuse. Someone who would hesitate. Instead, they ran straight into a sovereign force equipped with insight sculpted by divine timing. Your presence isn't passive anymore, it's disruptive. It bends falsehood. It disarms manipulation. It exposes intention. The games they brought were designed for a beginner. What they faced was someone who no longer plays. And now you're not just reacting to life, you're forecasting it. The visions, the nudges, the unexplainable insights, they aren't accidents. They're briefings. Downloads. Intel from layers of reality beyond the visible. Your instincts have graduated to anticipation. You no longer dodge attacks, you preempt them. And that terrifies anything that relies on secrecy. The plotters can't get ahead of someone who's being fed truths from a place they'll never reach. There's a wind at your back, not from chance, but from alignment. The support surrounding you isn't symbolic, it's tactical. Forces beyond this realm are actively intercepting interference before it ever touches your field. Movements are being redirected, conversations rerouted, actions suspended midair. In moments where silence settles, it's not emptiness you're hearing, it's a quiet download. Invisible guardians are repositioning events in your favor while you focus forward. There's no need to trace every shadow when the light's already circling behind you, sweeping the room clean before danger fully forms. There's no such thing as secrecy in this realm anymore. The illusion of privacy is collapsing. While hushed voices assume safety behind closed doors, the unseen realm is collecting every detail with surgical precision. Plots once concealed in obscurity are now leaking into your consciousness through dreams, flashes, or passing sensations that feel random, but never are. The sacred keeps nothing hidden from the one tuned in. And what they attempt to bury in corners ends up on your mental radar like an emergency beacon. There is no comparison between what you're walking with and what they're swinging at you. One side is still playing with basic tools of control, guilt, confusion, manipulation. The other side, you, is executing an invisible blueprint crafted with absolute timing and unseen allies. It's not warfare. It's calibration. Their strategies are built on reaction, yours is built on precision. The playing field has changed, and they're still trying to win a chess game on a map you've already transcended. Access isn't about knowledge, it's about alignment. And you've gained entrance to a flow of insight that doesn't just tell you what's coming, it tells you when and why. Stillness has become strategic. Movement is no longer reactive, it's prophetic. The spiritual intel you're receiving isn't abstract. It's exact, time-stamped, and actionable. They don't understand why their plans collapse before launching, but that's because you're tuned into a frequency where outcomes are rewritten before arrival. The timing of your trust has become your most unshakable weapon. Every disruptive attempt aimed your way now backfires like a faulty machine. What they send returns stronger. What they hide gets exposed louder. What they wish for you folds inward on themselves. You're not participating in back and forths anymore. You're not even in the room where the rumors form. You've moved beyond response and into remembrance of your power, your protection, and your positioning. Their efforts no longer sting because your field has grown resistant to false resonance. They didn't just lose access. They lost relevance. Elevation came when you stopped wrestling with shadows. The lesson wasn't how to destroy darkness, it was how to remain so lit that shadows have no function. The frequency you're holding now scrambles the systems of those who operate through pretense. Every interaction gets filtered through truth, and truth always wins. Their narratives glitch around you. Their performances unravel near you. You didn't confront the energy, you transcended it. And that's why nothing sticks. There's no fight. Just fallout for them. The memory of what they did isn't just emotional, it's spiritual architecture now. The timeline has been rewritten in your favor, but nothing has been deleted. It's all filed, every move, every mask, every manipulation attempt. Not for vengeance, but for clarity. You're seeing more than behavior, you're seeing recurring signatures from lives long past. It's all familiar now. Not because it hurts, but because it's been mastered. You've outgrown every trick. And every record they thought was lost has been transferred into your soul's permanent archive. The part they never anticipated was that you'd gain access to the blueprint itself. Not just a glimpse into their moves, but an unveiling of how those very moves lead straight into collapse. What they mistook for momentum was just delayed descent. The moment they felt most secure was when the cracks had already started. And while they smirked in self-congratulation, the deeper architecture of their failure had already been triggered. Their expiration date is coded into the fabric of their intentions, and every step they take accelerates the unraveling they didn't prepare for. This isn't your first encounter with these energies dressed in familiar skins. The same dynamics have played out before, only in different forms and different centuries. What changed wasn't them, it was your memory returning. Cycles once blurred now stand in crystal alignment. This isn't another round of collapse. This is the conclusion written by your awakening. You've been the quiet one, the sacrificed, the silenced. But not this time. Now you're the one holding the remote and rewiring the ending. The access you've gained doesn't just reveal what's in front of you, it links the pattern behind it. Every loop they run is part of an older system. And while they believe they're acting out of free will, the script is already worn out from overuse. Their methods repeat like a melody stuck in generational static. But now, you're fluent in the rhythm. You don't just predict the next scene, you've already rewritten your role in it. Their performance is routine. Yours is rewritten truth in real time. Every time they sent someone in costume, someone meant to derail, distract, or disarm, you saw beyond the surface. Helpers who withheld. Supporters who siphoned. Smiles that dimmed your light. You began to notice the pattern of perfect timing, their appearance always coinciding with your growth. That's no accident. The timeline shows it clearly. Your clarity has turned you into a spiritual analyst, tracking invisible fingerprints in the fabric of experience. Nothing slipped through. Nothing went unnoticed. Every event now has a timestamp in your internal archive. It's not paranoia when the patterns confirm themselves. There's a reason certain people only show up when you're rising. Why your body responds before your mind has words. That discomfort? It's not random. It's recognition. You've learned to stop dismissing the disruptions. You now categorize them. You record the shifts. You collect the receipts without needing revenge. Their entrance points, their tactics, their effects, it's all filed. Not in anger. In awareness. What used to be confusing is now documentation. What once drained you is now traceable. There's no need to debate illusions when you've seen the source code. They still speak in riddles. You operate in full translation. What felt like setbacks are now reclassified as intel upgrades. Their interference was unintentionally educational. They were unwitting teachers of your own discernment. And the beauty of this new state? It doesn't ask you to react. It invites you to record, to reposition, and to release. You don't fight shadows. You just study the way they move and adjust your light accordingly. And now the layers of time are peeling back. You're not just seeing this moment, you're watching echoes across lifetimes converge in this one. Old intentions dressed in new bodies. Ancient motives cloaked in modern interaction. It's all familiar. Not in pain, but in clarity. You recognize the sequence before the first word is spoken. You feel the repetition before it manifests. That's how you know this chapter is different. This isn't a rerun. This is the finale. And this time, you're holding the pen. Perception is no longer something that waits for confirmation. It's a live feed running through multiple layers of reality, capturing motion where others only see stillness. Shifts happen behind walls, yet you pick up their weight before the hinges even creak. Intentions leak before anyone opens their mouth. Rooms speak to you before you enter. Figures who once moved undetected through your world now stand exposed in strange clarity, their motives wrapped around them like visible mist. And the moment you recognize them, the game is over. Every energetic disruption leaves a trail. Some call it intuition, you call it a signal. The residue of malice, envy, or covert malice doesn't just float by anymore. It sticks to your field like smoke clinging to cloth. You track it like scent through corridors. When someone aims distortion in your direction, your senses lock in on its origin point like heat-seeking instrumentation. Emotion no longer blinds you, it informs you. The message isn't what was said, it's who sent the silence before it. You've become the kind of presence that feels what lingered in a space long after the doors have closed. There's no need to ask what happened, you feel it. Thought patterns still echo in the corners. Vibes left hanging in the air read like coded signals. You detect the story in what others miss entirely, a tension too sharp, a frequency that hums wrong, a memory soaked into the floorboards. Even conversations you weren't present for register on your system like motion-activated alerts. Nothing slips through unnoticed anymore. What they hoped would sneak past you now sounds louder than ever. Their efforts to conceal intentions read more like alarms than whispers. It's not that their moves got clumsier, it's that your calibration evolved. Where they tried covert signals, you now receive full data. And the beauty? You don't need to retaliate. You just reroute. Interference never lands because you've changed the locks on every spiritual door they used to access. They're reaching into a void that no longer echoes back. What used to feel like unrelated attacks now appears as a visible system. One signal led to another. One player wasn't acting alone. Now you see the pattern linking them, a string of interference attempts masked as isolated incidents. The lines connecting faces, timelines, and energy fields glow like circuit boards. You don't just catch the attempt, you catch the blueprint. And once you understand the network, you don't swat at flies. You cut power to the hive. There's no pleasure in the exposure, it's simply clarity. The same faces carrying old tactics. The same patterns wrapped in slightly new packages. But now your awareness has outpaced their ability to adjust. They haven't evolved. You have. What used to confuse you now confirms what you've always felt. Their roles are predictable. Their timing, rehearsed. The source behind them? Already identified. You're no longer surprised. You're systematized. Their disarray doesn't penetrate, it reveals itself like static on a broken radio. And now you're witnessing their collapses in advance. There's no panic in your response because you're no longer responding. You're observing the footage from the control room. Their attempts bounce before they touch you, rerouted through filters they can't bypass. They once sought to disrupt. Now, they only activate further insight. Every failed reach becomes another flag on your internal map. And you mark it not with fear, but with finality. They were moving like pieces on a board they didn't even design, each step a reaction to something they barely understood. But someone else had already written the script to a far more expansive game, one that spans dimensions and reincarnations. Not driven by fear or competition, but by design and destiny. While the crowd scrambles to interpret signs, new coordinates are being quietly embedded into reality itself by the one who no longer plays for points but for paradigm shifts. They assumed the power was in control, not knowing true power is in redesigning the field entirely. The view from elevation is not distorted by urgency. Where most stumble forward driven by instinct and noise, there is one who calculates from a silence so deep it echoes. The entire map is visible, twists, traps, and thresholds. There is no rush. Just alignment. While others respond to events, there's one who realigns outcomes. The moments meant to sabotage instead become stages, and their tactics register as echoes from a language that's no longer spoken. This isn't counterattack, it's resonance. The force in motion isn't aimed at enemies but tuned to a frequency that disarms hostility through coherence. When reality harmonizes with purpose, interference becomes irrelevant. They brought fear to a realm governed by presence, unaware that intention shaped by truth makes force obsolete. While some chase shadows, others stand at the center of gravity, watched by unseen forces that respond only to authenticity. There's no need to anticipate harm when reality is already bending around the one it cannot shake. Protection doesn't shout, it intercepts, dissolves, and reorients. Forces are rerouted before they gather. Plans fall apart mid-thought. Darkness forgets its path the moment it approaches. Safety, here, is not built, it radiates. A new field is present, so vast that even unspoken threats lose coherence before taking form. Elevation doesn't barricade, it renders interference irrelevant. The ones who try to disrupt find themselves reaching for something no longer there. What once triggered fear now barely registers. Their efforts pass through thin air, unanswered not by defiance, but by frequency. Movement here is different. Each act of integrity reinforces a layer of sanctuary. Each moment of clarity anchors a new boundary. They can aim, but they will miss, every time. Others still wage battles they assume are necessary, unaware that some have crossed thresholds where the notion of combat no longer applies. They watch, confused, as their efforts dissolve into irrelevance. Nothing sticks. No slander lands. The presence that once provoked now confuses. They expected resistance and met stillness. They expected retaliation and met grace. And in that grace was a mirror they couldn't bear to look into. Justice here doesn't knock, it reveals. Truth erupts from cracks they thought were covered. Secrets stored in silence surface through routes no one predicted. It's not revenge. It's unveiling. Files misplaced reappear. Agreements made in darkness are heard in daylight. The balance isn't restored by hand, but by law, the kind not written by men but enforced by essence. What was buried rises, not in fury, but in perfect, timed exposure. When balance is disrupted, the unseen begins to restore it in silence. Not through courtrooms or verdicts, but through a sequence of unfolding truths that can't be paused, silenced, or erased. Threads they thought were cut begin to reweave themselves into a tapestry of revelation. Those who once stood behind curtains start walking into the light with their hands full of facts. Quiet observers turn into unlikely messengers. Words once buried beneath shame and fear start forming sentences too loud to ignore. The same mouths that were fed with deception now speak only what resonates with a deeper pulse. Justice doesn't arrive as a knock, it becomes an atmosphere they can't breathe in. The illusion of secrecy dissolves once transparency becomes a living force. The places they whispered in now echo. The silence they counted on starts to speak in tongues they can't decipher. Camouflage fades. The hidden networks, once stitched together with subtlety, start unraveling under the pressure of visibility. Timelines collapse and the clock starts syncing with a rhythm they didn't design. It's not punishment, it's exposure. An unveiling choreographed not by vengeance but by necessity. Each piece of proof rises exactly when the moment calls for it. It doesn't drip, it surges. Voices once unsure find timing that feels orchestrated. Movements captured not by intention but by consequence. Records surface that no one expected to survive. Forgotten files, buried histories, dismissed warnings, all reappear as if summoned by a higher logic. There is a sequence, an order, a timing that doesn't align with panic but with power. Precision replaces coincidence. Design replaces delay. The most untraceable evidence is the kind not housed in devices or archives, it hums in vibration. Every harmful intent changes the current around them. It twists the air, leaves residue in the soulscape, contaminates timelines. These aren't accidents, they are energetic fingerprints etched into the blueprint of events. The awakened don't need cameras. They read reality. They feel the distortions. They know what's out of place because truth creates harmony, and lies cause static. A system beyond contracts and signatures has been activated. It keeps records with absolute memory and enforces correction with surgical calm. No alarms, no warnings. Just results. Actions once taken for granted now return dressed in consequence. And the price? Always exact. The margin for error? Non-existent. Where they assumed immunity, they find recurrence. What they dismissed as luck reveals itself as mercy now revoked. There are no calls to make, no bargains to strike, just the long return of everything that was once misplaced. This isn't a spectacle of revenge. It's a living equation balancing itself through every breath of integrity. The scales don't tilt, they reset. And as the old systems fail them, the one they tried to bury becomes untouchable. Not because of rage, but because of refinement. While they spiral and collapse, the energy they once tried to smother has taken flight. And what they can't admit is what they always feared, not retaliation, but transcendence. Not destruction, but irrelevance. Not that they lost, but that they were never part of the real story. There's no more waiting. No more hiding. The shift has already absorbed the attacks and turned them into momentum. Evolution didn't ask permission. It advanced. And now, the one they underestimated walks unshaken. Not armored in pride but carried by clarity. Wherever that presence moves, deception falters, distortion dissolves, and light alters the rules. The transformation is so complete that every attempt to diminish now fuels expansion. They built traps, elevation used them as ladders. They hurled harm, resilience reshaped it into radiant direction. And as they grasp for ways to undo what's been done, they discover the truth: the outcome was never in their control to begin with.